In the year 2000, a tiny, struggling startup walked into a corporate office and offered to sell itself for $50 million. The executives in that room laughed out loud. They turned it down flat. That startup was Netflix. The company laughing at them was Blockbuster. And the decision made in that room would become one of the most expensive mistakes in business history. Stay with me, because the reason they said no is the real lesson. To understand how insane this looks now, you have to understand how big Blockbuster was. This was not a small company. At its peak, Blockbuster had around 9,000 stores worldwide. It employed 84,000 people. Almost every American lived within a 10-minute drive of one. The blue and yellow logo was everywhere. Friday night meant one thing: a trip to Blockbuster. It was a giant. It felt unstoppable. And here is the dirty secret of how that giant made its money. It was not really the rentals. It was the late fees. If you forgot to return that tape on time, you got charged. And charged. At one point, late fees made up a massive chunk of Blockbuster's profit, hundreds of millions of dollars a year. Customers hated them, but that money was addictive. Remember that detail. It matters later. Now, meet the other side. Netflix was born from frustration. The story goes that co-founder Reed Hastings was hit with a $40 late fee for returning a movie too late. $40 for one tape. He was furious. And in that anger, an idea sparked. What if renting movies did not work like this at all? What if there were no late fees, ever? What if it just came to your door? So in 1997, Netflix launched. No stores. No shelves. You picked movies online, and red envelopes arrive in your mailbox. Keep them as long as you want. No late fees. Mail them back. Get the next one. It was clever, but it was also tiny, and it was bleeding money. By 2000, Netflix was desperate. They needed a lifeline, so they decided to ask the king himself. This is the moment everything hinged on. Netflix's founders flew to Dallas to meet Blockbuster's leadership. The pitch was simple. Buy us for $50 million. Let us run your online business. Together, we dominate. It was a gift, a chance to own the future for pocket change. And a response? According to those in the room, they were practically laughed out of the building. The deal was dead. Put yourself in Blockbuster's shoes for a second, because it is easy to judge them now. At the time, the decision felt obvious. Why would a multi-billion-dollar empire pay for a money-losing website with a few 100,000 users? Their stores were packed. Their profits were huge. The internet was slow and clunky. To them, Netflix was a cute little experiment, not a threat. That confidence was the trap. Here is the principle that destroyed them, and it has a name: the innovator's dilemma. It describes how successful companies fail precisely because they are successful. Blockbuster could not embrace the future because the future threatened their best business. Going online meant killing those beautiful, addictive late fees. Their biggest strength had quietly become their deepest weakness. Now watch how fast the empire cracked. For a few years, nothing dramatic seemed to happen. Blockbuster kept opening stores. Netflix kept mailing DVDs. But underneath, the ground was shifting. Internet speeds were exploding. And in 2007, Netflix made the move that changed everything. They launched streaming. Suddenly, you did not even need the mail. The movie just appeared on your screen. Instantly. The race was no longer close. It was over. Blockbuster just did not know it yet. Think about how brutal this was for Blockbuster's entire model. Their whole empire was built on physical locations. Rent, staff, shelves, inventory in thousands of buildings. Netflix had almost none of that. No late fees to defend. No stores to maintain. Just software and servers. One company was carrying a mountain of cost. The other was light, fast, and built for exactly where the world was heading. Blockbuster did try to fight back. They eventually scrapped late fees and launched their own online service. And honestly, it was not bad. For a brief window, they were actually catching up. But they were drowning in debt, tangled in corporate infighting, and burdened by all those expensive stores. They had moved too late and too slowly. The giant was now running uphill, and the hill was getting steeper. Here is the twist almost nobody talks about. Blockbuster CEO at the time, John Antioco, actually saw the danger clearly. He killed the hated late fees. He poured hundreds of millions into a real online push called Total Access. And it worked. Subscribers came flooding in. For one brief, shining moment, Blockbuster was genuinely fighting back. And then the people who owned the company stepped in to stop him. Activist investor Carl Icahn and a faction of the board were furious about the cost. Dropping late fees and funding an online war was eating into profits, and they wanted those profits now. The fight turned brutal. Antioco was forced out in 2007. His replacement reversed course, brought the fees back, and pulled spending away from the online push. To protect short-term profit, they strangled their own last shot at survival. Then the collapse came fast. In 2010, Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy. Let that sink in. A company worth billions, with thousands of stores and tens of thousands of employees, gone in roughly a decade. The stores closed one by one. The logo vanished from streets across the world. Today, there's exactly one Blockbuster store left on the entire planet. A single shop in Bend, Oregon, kept alive as a museum to what was lost. And Netflix? The company they laughed at for $50 million went on to become worth hundreds of billions. It changed how the entire world watches television. It created the word binge-watching. It won Oscars. It pumped out shows in dozens of countries. The little red envelope startup did not just survive. It rewrote the rules of an entire industry. The contrast is almost too perfect to be real. And here is the number that still stings. That $50 million Netflix they laughed out of the room? Within a few years, it was worth billions. Then tens of billions. Then hundreds of billions. $50 million would have been the greatest bargain in corporate history, a rounding error for a company that size. Instead, it became the most expensive single word ever spoken in a boardroom. No. So why does this matter to you today watching this? Because the mistake Blockbuster made is not a movie mistake. It is a human one, and it shows up everywhere, in companies, in careers, in your own life. The exact thing that makes you successful right now can quietly become the thing that traps you. Comfort is not safety. Comfort is often the most dangerous place to stand. Here is lesson one, and it is the big one. Never let your current cash cow blind you to the future. Blockbuster protected late fees instead of protecting their customers. They optimized for today's profit and lost tomorrow entirely. Ask yourself, were you holding on to simply because it pays well right now, even though you can feel the world moving past it? Lesson 2. Disruption almost never looks like a threat at first. It looks small, clumsy, and easy to dismiss. Netflix was tiny and losing money. That is exactly why Blockbuster ignored it. The next thing that disrupts your industry will probably look like a toy too. The winners are the ones who take small, weird, growing things seriously before everyone else does. Lesson 3, and maybe the most personal. Speed matters more than size. Blockbuster was 100 times bigger than Netflix and still lost. Why? Because Netflix could move, adapt, and change direction fast, while Blockbuster was weighed down by everything it owned. In a fast-moving world, being nimble beats being huge. Sometimes your assets are actually anchors. There's one more layer here that most people miss. Blockbuster did not lack money. It did not lack talent or reach. It lacked the willingness to cannibalize itself. The hardest thing in business and in life is to walk away from something that is working before it stops working. Almost nobody does it in time. That is why these stories keep repeating decade after decade. And it does keep repeating. Kodak invented the digital camera, then buried it to protect film. Nokia owned the phone world, then watched the smartphone erase it. Taxi companies laughed at ride-sharing. The pattern is always the same. A dominant giant, a small disruptor, a moment of arrogance, and a collapse. Blockbuster is just the most painfully clear example of a law that never stops working. So the next time you feel completely safe, completely on top, let a little of that Blockbuster story whisper in your ear. Stay paranoid. Stay curious. Keep watching the small, strange things growing at the edges of your world. Because the future rarely sends a warning. It just shows up one day in a red envelope, asking for $50 million, while everyone in the room is still laughing. If this story gave you a new way to think about money, success, and the traps of comfort, then do one thing for me. Subscribe. This channel is built on exactly this. The biggest money stories ever told, and the timeless lessons hidden inside them. The crashes, the comebacks, the billion-dollar mistakes. Hit subscribe, and tell me in the comments, what is the next Blockbuster, the giant about to fall? See you in the next one.